Hello, thank you for attending the Beetles session. It's great to see so many people enthusiastic about beetles. And thank you for your patience while we set up what we tried to make a more interactive session this time. So, if I could first introduce our Rothamsted entomological team, and FarmEd is kindly here as well. So, firstly, there's me. I'm an applied entomologist at Rothamsted Research. My name is Kelly Jowett. We have a molecular entomologist here, a very fancy term, but working on viral spread insect vectors. And this is Dion Garrett. And then we have Oliver Clark-Hattingh, who is about to start his PhD on PhD beetles, dung beetles. But he's been working at Rothamsted as a technician with us. Charlotte Robb, who is a current PhD student studying beneficial insects in mustard systems with Coleman's mustard. So go and visit her at her stand to learn out more about that. Then we have Harry Webb, who's a taxonomical entomologist on the Rothamsted Insect Survey with a specialism in ants, but he mostly deals with aphids on the insect survey. We have Alex Dye of FarmEd, formerly of Rothamsted Research, who is a taxonomist, but now a sustainable farming educator. And then we have Suleiman, and sorry, Suleiman, I can't remember your second name and I can't read from here, who is a PhD researcher at Rothamsted Research, working on regenerative systems for slug control. Did I get that right? So, what we're going to do is start off with a general kind of introduction to carabid beetles, and then we're hopefully going to go into live trap sorting and apply what we've learned about how to identify carabid beetles in terms of traps that actually were sampled from this farm here that you are on today. So we are sampling that farm as part of the Ag Zero project, looking at different interventions towards net zero agriculture and the synergies with biological biodiversity in farm systems. So those kind of win-win situations, that's what we're looking at in the Ag Zero project. So we're working with a number of farm sites to do that. So we have samples from nearby that I looked in and I saw that there was interesting beetles in there, but there may be some surprises. So hopefully we'll see some nice things in those. So we'll start out with what is a carabid beetle. So did any of you attend my talk last year on beneficial beetles here at Groundswell? Anyone in the audience raise your hands? Oh, we have a new audience then. I'm not preaching to the converted. So do any of you know what a carabid beetle is? Well, Debbie should. Do you know what a carabid beetle is? So, and I must give a shout out to my lovely friend Megan, who was my office pet, who assisted me last year, but she is sadly no longer alive, but still with us, mascot of entomology. So carabid beetles are also known as ground beetles. You may see them when you're walking around in this kind of weather, running across your path. And they are in pretty much everywhere, all around the world. That's why we know a lot about them, because they're very abundant in a number of different situations. So there are around 40,000 species worldwide, 350 species in the UK, 30 of which are common in farmland. And those ones that are common in farmland are really useful. So they eat all sorts of invertebrate pests, weed seeds. I call them the hyenas of the beetle world. They'll eat pretty much anything in crop areas. So they're very important for crop protection. So we want to know about them in terms of controlling pests, weeds in crops. My lovely favourite statistic about weed seed control is they eat up to 4,000 weed seeds per metre squared per day. Someone actually counted that up. So they provide significant pest control. And they are also sensitive to environmental change. So if you implement a different kind of management strategy on your farm, you can gauge the success of that strategy pretty well by studying the carabid beetles. And that's why they're used in a lot of like environmental studies to track change in ecosystems over time. So, and the last point about why we study carabid beetles is that they're very easy to trap. So all you have to do, literally, is put a cup in the ground. You bury that, level, well, any pint glass, which there's probably many handy ones hanging around this place. Just bury it in the ground, level with the soil surface, beetle comes along, falls in the cup. Now, you do have to kill the beetles, and I absolutely love beetles, but I have killed many, many over my career so far, 6 years as an entomologist. Over the course of my 4-year PhD, I killed 40,000 carabid beetles, even though I really like them so much. But I do say that I've saved many more than I've killed. So the reason that we have to kill them in the trap is that they will eat each other. They are that voracious that they will eat each other in a trap. So we do have to kill them to really know all the species that we're trapping. So yes, easy to capture, so we can find out about them. So the other main important thing to understand is that there, of that 30 species that are common in farmland, that you will find all about in your guide, they are very different. So if I can give you a, well, you'll see it during the course of the talk, but if you come up to the front, you can see at the end that they're very variable in terms of size and dispersal capability. So knowing about the diversity of beetles in your system is very important in terms of some of them can crawl around in the foliage, some of them will run along the ground, and you can see that they might predate on different pests in crop areas. And also, of these different species, they have different tolerances for, say, damp weather, dry weather, droughts, for different environments. So if you have a diversity of beetles in a farming system, then whatever kind of environmental things that the kind of changing climate has to throw at us, at least one of those species is bound to thrive in any given year. So biodiversity gives us that kind of wiggle room in the systems. So what we say that's more important in having a lot of beetles is having a diversity of beetles, and that's what's kind of behind being able to identify them to species. So that's why I'm trying to give farmers the tools to do that themselves, so they can monitor change in their systems, monitor the predatory potential of those systems, and see if what they're doing is doing well in terms of pest control, but also environment, because carabid beetles are also important for farmland birds, for instance. They are important in the ecosystems anyway, and they're absolutely fabulous in their own right. They are beautiful and should be enjoyed in their own kind of goodness. So, have we got some samples set up? So, I will take you through how to use the Carabid ID guide. So, if we can flip to the kind of flowchart. Oh, first one. So firstly, we're doing, is it a carabid? So that's the page before that. Thank you, Alex. Is it a carabid? So, carabid beetles, I have my Chloe the carabid, huge carabid here. Carabids have main features where you can identify them. I mean, generally, I think that you can, once you get your eye in, they just kind of look a bit carabidy. But if you're a beginner, these things that you should look out for. Can you do the point into the features?
Well, I was going to hold it up.
Oh, you're going to hold it up? Oh, fully interactive. Oh, but they usually have 6 legs. But the key features we're looking for here that are quite visible to the general eye. The thread-like antenna. So these are simple antenna with no clubs or anything like that. 5 tarsal segments, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the end. And then So those are the main two that we're looking for in terms of that. And then can we show the skeleton? Because it is actually on the mod. What order are they in the guide? So yes, it's the coxer that you need to show. That's on the underneath. So they have these kind of thigh segments that usually have legs attached to them. So yes, in the guide, that bit that's underneath them, the hind coxer. So, but that's not usually kind of mainly if you look for the thread-like antenna, the 5 tarsal segments, and simple hind legs as well. So they haven't got fringed sections such as dung beetles have for pushing dung. These are running beetles generally. In fact, in Germany, they're called Laufkäfer, literally running beetles. So do we have a beetle under the scope to play? Is it a... Oh, I can see it on the screen. Is this what you can see on the screens? Can we have a show of hands? Is this a carabid based on the information in the step 1? Can I have a show of hands? Is this a carabid for yes? Which carabid is it? Calathus fusipes. Yes, this is a carabid, correct. Right, can we have our next beetle? I think this is my kind of view. Live entomology. Right, okay. Is this a carabid? Well, it's got the thread-like antenna. Can we look at the hind legs? So, I think this one's going to be on the coxer, isn't it? You picked an awkward one for me. I was going to say the Sylphidae. Well, is this a carabid? Can we have a show of hands? Unfortunately, this is not a carabid, but it's one of those awkward specimens where it's really hard to show you why it's not a carabid. No, it's a burying beetle. We often get those in the traps. So a lot of the burying beetles will have these clubbed antennas, which is why I chose to put that sample in there. But the key thing about the burying beetle, actually, is that you can see the hind part of its bum section past its wing cases. So we can almost see it on the scope here if we pull it up a bit. That you can see that little bum section there poking out from the end of the beetle. So those are burying beetles. Burying beetles are really fascinating beetles in their own right, but they will come to pitfall traps quite a lot because they're attracted by the scent of dead things, which is essentially what is in the trap. They're one of the only beetles that practices parental care as well, but I won't describe it to you, especially before lunchtime. So, yeah, look it up at your own peril. Can we have our next beetle, please? Do I have to tell you? Okay. So what they do is the two parents work together to get the corpse of a mouse. They skin the mouse together by chewing off all of its fur, turn it into a ball, bury that ball underground, and lay their eggs in it. And then while the eggs are developing into little larvae, they actually care for them. They chew up the corpse of the mouse and feed it to them, each larva, and then they turn the larva and make sure they don't have any fungi growing on them and such that may happen in the corpse of a decaying mouse. And they take care of them all the way through till they pupate and turn into adult beetles. So it's a fascinating behaviour, and they've done a lot of different behavioural studies about the quality of the parental care and the different brood sizes. So, but yeah, it's an example of parental care and two parents working as a team as well.
Us having to not let dead animals and bury them on the farm and having to take them away, does that affect the beetles and things?
I think so. It probably would. But there's plenty of roadkill nowadays, isn't there? You see that around in the landscape, so it's the shifting of resources, I guess. So, have we got the next beetle? Okay. Is this a carabid? I think we can see all the key features here, so can I have a show of hands over, is it a carabid, is it not a carabid? Hands up for yes. That is correct. This one's a carabid. So, is this Harpalus? It is. Yes. So, is that Rufipes? Yeah, so the key thing about Rufipes is you can see this kind of texture on the wing cases. I don't know why I was going to point to this little screen down here as if you can see what I'm pointing at, but the texture of the wing cases, when they're dry, they have this beautiful golden shimmer to them because the hairs are golden on a dark background. They're absolutely beautiful beetles. And these are one of the prime seed eaters that are behind that statistic of 4,000 weed seeds per meter square per day. Their larvae have this very interesting behavior of there's 3 instars, so 3 growth stages of a carabid larva. They develop in the soil. And the Harpalus Rufipes larvae live in these little tunnels. For the first 2 growth stages, they come out and they gather seeds. And then they take them down into the burrow and cache them like a squirrel. And they have these weed seeds in the burrow. And during the 3rd growth stage of their larval form, they just stay in the burrow and eat seeds all day long. So I think that's a really cute behavior. So, do we have another beetle? I think this is going to be our last. Is it a carabid? Is it not a carabid? Oh, are we going on to species ID now? Should we do that?
We can, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, we're getting on in time. So if we can do the flowchart page, can you be do you want to be my assistant this time, Charlotte? So we do the flow page. Right. So, flow page. So we start with the general size. What is the size of this carabid, Harry? The general size of it? 2 centimeters. So it's in that middle box. And then we follow that along to what colour is it? Well, it's hard to tell on the screen, but it's kind of a black colour. So are we going through to it's black? And the general, so this next stage of the general body shape, number 3, takes a little bit of imagination, I will say. But on the very last page of the guide, we do have a kind of shape guide there to which shape is what. So just a little bit bigger to show you. But this one, I will tell you, because it's hard to see on the screen, is rectangular. So if we follow the rectangular from that, we get to the box with a lot of carabids in it. So this is the most abundant box in the guide. So if you can tell which one this is out of that one. So we then go to the species pages. So that is the correct page, actually. You've got turned straight to the correct beetle there. So what we're looking for in this beetle is, I wonder if I can wander down to this screen over here without interrupting the mic too much. So this one I will give you the answer already. So this is the shoulder blade. And what we're looking for with this beetle is this very feature here. So if you go to the page, you can see the diagram of that. That's the shoulder blade that we're looking for. And then also we have these very, very distinct darts on the middle section, which we call the pronotum. We have these very, very distinct 2 marks, which, as you're looking at the beetle from the top, this is very distinctive as the common shoulder blade. And this is one of the great predators on slugs particularly. So if you have a problem with slugs in your farm or garden, you definitely want some ABACs around. I don't know any fun facts about its larva, sorry. The common shoulder blade. So I think it's the second beetle in the page 13. So is it just a matter of going to the flowchart diagram, finding the beetles in the box that's appropriate, and then going to the species pages and ticking off which of those key features? How are we doing on time? Sorry? Oh, right, we're doing okay, actually. We're going on schedule. Have we got another one? Right. Oh, we can see the key features here. So this is in that same flowchart box. So it's the same size, it's this medium size, and it is black. So it takes us to the rectangular shape. I mean, it does take a bit of imagination, but that is more rectangular than some other carabids. So it takes us to this big box with the same number of beetles in. So what we're looking for here is on the edge of the pronotum. So, Harry, can you twist the beetle a little bit? Just so we can see the hind angle of the pronotum. Ooh, I did it. I did the bad thing, sorry. You can actually see on my giant Chloe the carabid here, this tooth segment is what we're looking for there. Don't talk in front of the thing. So we can see this on. It's much easier to see when you can actually poke the beetle in real life, trust me. But looking for that little tooth on the edge of the waistcoat there, where it joins the other section of the beetle. And that tells us that this is the most abundant ground beetle in farm systems. This is the rain beetle black clock. So can you see the key feature of that tooth on the... And then if you've got any doubts, because it is very similar to the great black clock, then you can look at whether its feet are hairy or not. Can we look at its hind tarsi end segment of its feet and see if they're hairy, Harry? So they should have little hairs on the underneath. I can kind of see them from here. Yeah, so you can just kind of see those hairs on the underneath. It's top down at the minute, but if you just twist them to one side, you can just about make those out with a 20 times hand lens. But generally, if you have that very distinctive tooth, you've got the rain beetle black clock. So that is one of the most difficult ones to go between. So the other difficult one is, if we can get the two of the copper ones up for comparison, and then you will know the most difficult carabid beetles to identify, and you can be really confident about the rest. So it's between Cupreus and Attendees. Whichever you get to first. So, any questions while I'm waiting? Instead of taking the mic out there, I'll just repeat your question on the mic for the team. So, okay, I saw you first, so.
Are the carabid beetles one family, or are they other beetles with the same similarities?
So the question was, are carabid beetles one family or a group of the same ones with the same characteristics? So they are all one family, unlike the dung beetles, which are ones that have the same niche, as we might say. So carabids are the same family, Carabidae. So it's very easy. There are some that are quite distinctive and specialists within the Carabidae, and there's some funky behaviors, but agricultural carabids are generally quite similar in behaviors. In so much as I say there's differences, they are quite generic carabids, you might say. So we have... Do we want to just... I'll just do your question before, since you put your hand up. Okay, well, thank you for your lovely comment about being inspired to trap carabid beetles and put lots of cups out. The question was, what is the best way to trap them? And you've noticed that they are nocturnal. Well, many species are nocturnal. So what we generally do is trap at least overnight, but to get a good number of carabids, what we advise is maybe a 7-day trap. Just leave it out there for a week. And that's what I'm asking people to do as part of the carabid monitoring scheme. And if you download the Carabid app, which we are going to display to people in a little while, it will guide you through the process of the trapping and the setup. So the minimum trap that we ask in the monitoring scheme is doing 3 traps in a transect. But obviously, with beetles being quite variable in their activity, it's not going to be very indicative of what you do. You can just get a snapshot of time, but if it's a cold day, you might not get very many beetles over that week. So, you know, so what would be a good number? Depends on what you want to find out, and how you set them up depends on the same thing. So I would say that if you wanted to run a trap of 3, it would be most indicative if you ran the traps back to back to get a number over time, or if you was just wanting to monitor one field, run a couple of transect lines with each other. But that base 3 unit that I've designed within the Carabid monitoring scheme to give people that flexibility in what they want to discover from the monitoring, so they can build it around their questions in a way. So that was what I was hoping from that. But so this is our next Carabid. So this is a different one. So what size is this, Harry? About a centimetre. So that falls within that bracket. Down, and it is metallic. It's a very beautiful metallic colour. So I just want to check that I get the right one here. Oh, right. No, I can do that. So, yeah. Right. I'm just a bit concerned about the size on that one. No, they're both in that box, aren't they? Right. Okay, I'm with it. So, metallic. And then we go to, they are the rectangular shape again. So that takes us to 2 species, which is the copper seed eater or the copper green clock, which I have arranged on the pages because these are the ones that entomologists commonly get confused with each other, which is why I was making double sure that I had the right one on the screen so that I don't tell you the wrong one from, from the is it. So I'll ask you to identify this one. So I will point out that it has 2 antennal segments that are paler than the rest. Now, if we can kind of, so that base one there, and then the one next to it. Am I seeing that right, Harry? Two antennal segments. And then it's got kind of, it's not very clear on the screens, but it's got, on its little waistcoat section, it's got 2 little darts. Oh yeah, I can kind of make those out now. Lovely. They're so beautiful, aren't they? I always love to see these. And then can we rather cheekily look at its bum section, please, Harry? So if we look at the part of its bum that's actually the wing cases, you can see that it's quite pointy. Just zoom in on that. Right, so you can kind of see that there's like a little divot and then a point on that one. So, can I have... I'm going to ask you to put hands up in different ways, but then how am I going to count them? Hands up if it is a copper seed eater. Do you think it's a copper seed eater? Hands up. Oh, sorry, you're wrong. It's a copper green clock. So the majority of people was right. So you can be confident in these very difficult ones that even entomologists sometimes gets wrong. You've just identified correctly. So the other carabid species should be an absolute breeze. Can we have maybe a Notiophilus? Just because I want to make it on the big screens, because it's... Have I not in that box? It's got lost then. Yeah, it's got lost. Have we got one of the other funky small ones? Have we got a Trechus?
We do have a Trechus. Yeah, we've got a Trechus.
I think people will be interested in the trachis. Any questions while we wait for the Sienna flat beetle? Okay, I saw you first. If you can speak loudly so I can hear you. That is an absolutely fantastic question. Thank you for that. So the gentleman asked how the work that we do at Rothamsted feeds back into advice for farmers. So one of the key the papers just come out. Myself and Dion Garrett did a study on field margins for carabid beetles, where we found something very surprising. Now, when I started my PhD, I was told that field margins were very beneficial for carabids in farm landscapes because they provide an overwintering habitat in the terms of tussocky grasses that provides a refuge for carabid beetles in the landscape. So the thought was that if you have a field margin, the carabid beetles will subsist in there, even in a very disturbed environment. The carabids will stay there and spill over into the crops. So margin to crop, they're spilling out from the margins into the field. So you should see more abundances near to margins. But what we did was we looked at different margin types because I wanted to figure out what margins are best for farmers to put in on different fields. And we found something very surprising, that the margins actually didn't have very many carabids in. There was not very many carabids in the area 5 meters from the margins, where we might expect to see that spillover effect. The most carabids were in the field centres, which was a very surprising thing to me, and I wanted to find out what was behind this trend. And I will say that this was a very well set up experiment, if I do say so myself, where we had a lot of repetition. And you can read the scientific paper out now. It's called multi-scale. I should know the name of our own paper, shouldn't I? Multi-scale abundances on, yeah. So if you search for Jowett, Rothamsted, multi-scale carabids, I'm sure it will come up. But it was a well-replicated experiment, so we can be pretty sure that what we were seeing was correct. So particularly, wildflower margins were not great for supporting carabid beetles in the actual margins. There was much less abundance where you had a wildflower margin. And when you had a grass margin, it almost resulted in a barrier effect to carabids moving between fields. But where you had an urban area next to the field, there was a big dip in the abundances in the field. So what I take from that paper was that carabid beetles may not be using field margins in the field season. So they don't have very many resources in. Carabids are quite open area hunters, and the field centres are great environments for them. They have a lot of prey, they have a lot of weed seeds, so they are in those field centres already. What we might think about more is what in-field interventions are driving those beetles in that area. So another experiment we did saw that undersowing with a grass clover mix in spring oats was particularly beneficial for carabid beetles and carabid beetle larvae. So I did subterranean trapping, and that kind of below ground environment is quite important for them in the resources that are in the fields. So, and reduced tillage. That was another effect that we saw, particularly the big snail hunting species were positively affected by reducing tillage, because they were hunting in the surface chaff. So species by species kind of different effects. It was, you know, they have different environmental tolerances. So we're trying to pick apart what's behind the margin effects with the carabid monitoring scheme. So I'm asking farmers to survey in margins, 5 meters into the field, and then in the field center to replicate my kind of experimental design, but over a huge data set of people doing different things, different infield environments, different outfield environments, different margins. If I can get information on that, then we can really figure out, because I think that field margins need to be there for other invertebrates, not just carabids, because they're very good for mobile invertebrates, for ladybirds, for hoverflies, for spiders, which are all also really important predatory invertebrates. So we need to think about not so much getting rid of margins. Do not get rid of margins. Never quote me on that. Love margins. But where do we put them on the farm to make sure they have the most benefit, particularly as a buffer for other environmental effects such as urban areas? That was a very long response to a simple question, but you look pretty happy with it. Thank you. So shall we move on to look at the Sienna flat beetle, which is something that a lot of arable growers will be particularly interested in, and Charlotte's going to be particularly interested in this one for her PhD project, because this is one of the key predators of cabbage stem flea beetles. So this one is a very small carabid beetle, but it is persisting in the areas. It's kind of a shy carabid. It's around the roots of oilseed rape that we trap it the most. And we trap it in subterranean traps as well, the adults and the larvae in subterranean traps. And it predates on the larval stages more of the cabbage stem flea beetles when they drop to the soil to precate. And so if you have a problem with cabbage stem flea beetle, which I know many people do, you definitely want more Sienna flat beetles in your crops. So we are, in Charlotte's project, particularly looking at interventions in mustard crops towards supporting these beetles. So that's another way that we are trying to design species-specific kind of what is good for these particular pests of particular problems. So, right. Do we want to move on to the production? 5 minutes. Shall we just look at one trap sample then? And then maybe people can crowd around to chat at us at the end. Oh, question. Okay. They were, I'm sorry, I have to repeat the question. So the lady asked, if they kill each other in the trap, like, are they not going to kill each other on the farm, I guess? And how do you, if you bring them all into the same area, are they going to kill each other? Are they going to... Okay, so if you have a problem with a particular pest and you want to encourage the beetles in, are they not going to predate on each other? How do you get them into that area? Was that kind of the gist of it? Okay. So they only really are a problem predating on each other when they're stuck in a cup for a week together. So I think we'd all predate on each other if we were stuck in a giant cup together, if we was hungry. So in a crop area where there are resources around, particularly if there's a lot of pests, they're going to go for the pests, especially soft-bodied pests, which are easy prey. And the good thing about having a diverse group of carabids is that they can, so if you had all of one type, they would be existing in the same niche, as it were. They would be predating on the same pests and competing with each other. But if you have slightly different carabids, they all eat slightly different pests, which adds up in a cumulative kind of effect. I hope I've explained that in the kind of... Oh, right, if you don't have beetles there in the first place, well, I assure you that you probably have got carabid beetles unless you've only just sprayed an insecticide. They are literally everywhere. But that's what we are doing. We're trying to design what kind of things people can do to attract them into the areas. But the main things, and this is covered a little bit in the guide, if you've got one of the guides to remind you, but I will say it, is that we provide areas for them to feed, breed, and shelter. That's the way to think about all invertebrates, really. So in terms of feeding, we need to think about carabids and their alternative prey over time, not just when the crops are there and the pests are there. They need to eat all year round, not just when there's a pest problem. So feed is a kind of temporal thing, not just a spot in time that you have a pest at this time, come and eat them. So breed, they breed in the soil. So good soil conditions will support carabids, and then they will add up to better soil conditions. It's all additive. The ecosystem is a fantastic thing. And shelter is that kind of overwintering habitat and the infield environment. So having diverse structures in the landscape. So in your crop areas, having undersowing, having surface chaff, that kind of thing is a structural thing. Think at the scale of a beetle, like how it will experience being in a crop area. If there's lots of vegetation around, lots of structure in that environment, that's going to be a better place for it to live and to eat and breed and escape predation from farmland birds, which we do need to support as well, but in terms of beetle supporting. And overwintering, so they do need to overwinter. Many carabids overwinter in the soils in crop areas, though, so that adds into the soil quality as well. So it is all additive in terms of supporting them. So we are looking at such things as cover cropping, undersowing, reduced tillage for supporting them in the fields. And the specifics of those things we yet have to research, but we know particularly that cover cropping is very good for carabid beetles. There's been a lot of research on that. So, and another thing is diversity at a farm scale of habitats and of crops. That is beneficial for carabid beetles. That was also another long answer to a simple question. I hope that's... All right, we're nearly up of time. For the sake of time, I think we're going to have to draw the session to a close. I hope that it was going to be live trap sorting, but we may have to ask interested parties in seeing what has been trapped on the site to come to the front after the session. And yeah, anyone who wants to learn about the Carabid app as well, if you want to come to the front and have a word with us, or you can visit us at our stands. So we will be at the Rothamsted stand, we will be at the Coleman stand, and we will be at the Farmland stand if you want to come and chat with any of us. Right, thank you.